Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy here. For nerds, by nerds, hanging out with some of my esteemed colleagues.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
Got a little Nerdarchy humor going on before getting this one started. But today we want to talk about player tips and role-playing your flaws and what that means. We're going to probably, on this video, we're probably going to dip in and out of D&D and maybe talk about some other games that we play.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, D&D, they just recently introduced a flaw section. And when one of those flaws comes up, that pretty much basically sets them up to get inspiration.
Right.
Whenever that comes up. But that's only one way of doing it. Another idea for flaws would be, if you have low stats.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking of it from a low stat perspective. How do you play a guy with an 8 dex or an 8 strength rather than just be like, oh, he's weak and he doesn't really try to do anything with his muscles.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that. Like, for instance, okay, so in Scott Garaby's game, I'm playing a fighter warlock who has an 8 dexterity. And, basically, my thing is he's lame. So he's got one, he's got a bad leg that he can't move around on. It really hinders his agility. And, it doesn't slow him down because if you ever seen someone who's kind of like crippled, sometimes they can move pretty fast.
Right.
But
yeah, they figured out how to move.
Yeah, but it's really awkward, and it's not graceful at all. So he's basically kind of like hobbles to get places, especially if he's trying to move with any kind of speed, because like he's got his one knee that's crippled, so he can't really bend it or whatever. Like that. That's how I play it off and role play it.
In the same game, I'm actually playing a Warforged sorcerer, and I wanted to go with the draconic ancestry. So I'm like, well, what if I made this guy as a prototype? It was actually Dave's suggestion to have a Warforged that is designed after the Dragonborn. So the concept behind it was they were supposed to be able to, reproduce the breath weapon alongside a Warforged's fighting abilities. Well, the guy who designed me totally screwed up. So like I spark and cringe and things while I'm moving. So I've got a low strength. I can't get the ability to do what most Warforged have the ability to do.
So you're a little off.
I'm a little off.
In Scott's game, I'm just a dwarf that is not as strong as everybody else. He's averagely strong for a human, and for a dwarf, that's kind of lame. But I always think of dwarves as really tough and really burly.
Strapping.
Yeah, strapping, and this guy is anything but strapping.
So you're as spindly as a human, huh?
Well, I'm like a youngling dwarf, but I'm like older, so it's kind of strange.
Well, I mean, all of that being said, like the stats is the one thing, but like we get all these like cool flaws that we pick when we build our personality character traits from our background with 5th edition, which I mean, it's kind of cool because it really does integrate role-playing aspects right into the character build, which is kind of a new concept for this RPG.
Right.
It's not like super top storyteller based like a system like White Wolf or Fate, but it's a little bit of an innovation for D&D, and it's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So at least it makes a new player think about their character. Like I just created for Andrew Knapp's Githyanki game a sailor, and basically my flaw is I never back down, so that could definitely come up, especially in that game where there is a lot of internal friction among the players because it's an evil campaign.
Right.
I also took the bond, which is the ship is the most important. Crewmates and captains come and go. So, like, even from that standpoint, like, the bond, in a way, also has certain aspects that I find to be kind of flawed.
Yeah. It's like your center of gravity for your character is pointed in a direction.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can really screw you up.
Yeah, like, and I picked this one really on purpose because, in one of the previous sessions of that campaign, the captain's ship crashed and ran around.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if it's your ship, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Irregardless, he blames a traitor Githyanki that was under him. But at the end of the day, what kind of competent captain isn't in charge of all of his crew?
Mm-hmm.
So like I picked a couple things that are kind of frictionless, and one of them is a straight up flaw, and the other one is probably going to get played like a flaw.
Right.
But then there's other games where you actually where the flaws are built more integral to the game, like Mutants and Masterminds. You're required to take what's called complications,
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it might be like Superman's.
He's got a weakness.
He's got a weakness to kryptonite, and also his powers in a red sun. Mm. So they're really good examples, and the way that system works, it's Benny driven. So.
Exactly.
Every time your complications come up, you get a perk, and that perk is hero points.
Right.
Also, like a good example would be Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Every time Aunt May gets threatened, Spider-Man has to figure it out, and he might get a hero point, or maybe he's got a date with Mary Jane, but the Rhino is rampaging through downtown. What do you do? So these are like that's how those
having
come
a secret
into play.
identity, keeping it secret.
Yeah.
So when you have a flaw, you have to make sure that it's played correctly, and not just say, well, I'm going to take this thing so that I can maximize its advantage. You're not taking these things so you can say, you know what, I'm going to go attack that guy because he crashed the ship. You're playing it because this is going to create some really cool role playing things, and it's going to be a challenge to play. I mean, we don't create characters just to go slaughter stuff. We don't create characters to maximize every little advantage. It's a role playing game. So you're there to role play and interact with a story.
Yeah, and have your characters develop.
Exactly.
So like the I guess the biggest problem with any game that has flaws built into it is the players a lot of times will min-max and try and mitigate the flaws.
Yeah.
Or use them when it's convenient.
If the DM says, well, I'm going to run a game where you're going to have to go take out this guy. I ran the Metal Lord game. So I didn't want anyone to take the complication of enemy, I hate the Metal Lord. Well, that's not a flaw. That's the design of the game.
Right.
You can't say, well, my flaw is I'm going to go complete.
Oh wait,
this
I
mission.
did take that complication, but I took like 3 others as well.
Yeah, you had other stuff, and your flaw about the Metal Lord was he was specifically hunting you because of other things in your backstory.
Yes.
It wasn't I just hate the Metal Lord.
No, yeah.
So I mean, yours was different.
I was indifferent towards the Metal Lord personally.
Well, he was, or you were his enemy.
Yeah, actually,
not him being yours.
Yeah.
So, anything else we want to talk about with flaws and playing?
Well, in 5th edition, really, like there's a couple classes that kind of have flaws built into them. Depending on how deep you want to delve.
Okay.
Right off the top of my head, I can think of 2, and that is the Warlock and the Sorcerer.
Okay.
The Warlock, because you have the Patron. The Patron can be boon or bust pretty much, but the aspects under the Warlock class are pretty dark. So if you're not playing an evil character, then most likely it's more of a drawback. So like. One of the integral crucial parts of developing that character is figuring out how that pack came about and with who. The who, what, where, and why. Essentially. Like, going back to my character, like, when he was in that accident and lamed his leg, he was actually dying, and, because he was in an explosion in a smithy, and, he was offered a chance of living, and of course he didn't want to die, so he agreed to it. But I've role played it as he sold his soul. He basically sold his soul to the devil, and things like, so with the DM, like, hey, I want to go to hell and get my soul back.
Right. See, now my sorcerer in that game, he is also a warlock. For some reason, that game is really highly populated with warlocks.
They're
only half of the players are warlocks.
Yeah, it's 4 out of 8.
And they're all multi-class.
My warlock, like, I didn't want the traditional, make a deal. So I went a different route. I just basically said, you know what? He came across some information, and he's essentially stolen power from, a lost god. So it's like, well, if the god or any of his minions ever realize this is going on, like, I'm just the enemy. Like, eventually something's going to come up, and it's like, yeah, we don't like this.
We need that back.
So he read a book in a night, while everyone was, kind of camping out by the fire. And when he finished it, he doesn't really recall what was in the tome. But he just
inside of his chest was the matrix of leadership.
No.
Oh. All right.
But he hears this booming voice in his head that says, like, I'm awake. So he's awakened some elder god. I have no idea. I left it wide open for the DM. But so rather than me making a deal, I've stolen power, and he's got I've got potentially enemies out there that I'm going to have to deal with. So I like that angle as well. This way you can still have a
dude, or he could totally just Unicron you.
Yeah, there's always that as well.
But but then you have to open up the matrix of leadership and you just blow them apart. It'd be all good.
Yeah, being a warforged, it's not a bad idea.
We need some 80s glam rock playing in the background. The other potential is sorcerer. I think is. I think your ancestor be played as a flaw as well, especially with the wild mage.
I think wild mage in and of itself is a good flaw system right there.
You never know what's going to happen. You could
burn down the bar,
be ridden by gobbleos as a sheep.
Be blue. Yeah.
Well, there's some characters that wouldn't mind being blue.
Okay.
Get your Smurf on.
How about green?
Is green an option? I think it's just blue.
Whatever, it's wild mage.
Yeah, so we can come up with it.
It says whatever.
We need to make our own
1 to 100 says whatever the DM wants it to.
What'd you say?
Huh?
What the 100 says whatever the DM wants.
The D 1 to 100 says whatever the DM wants it to.
Randomized in your head the wild mage chart.
Fun.
So, are there any other directions? I mean, specifically with D&D, it's going to be limited to what you decide to roll. It's going to be limited to your background. It's going to be limited to selections from your stats, maybe some class stuff. But all the backgrounds too have a lot of stuff in there where it's kind of dependent on NPCs, which as a background feature. So that can then also be a flaw as much as a boon, because generally any kind of interaction thing like that goes both ways.
Exactly. Anything where you have a contact, they can, if it's like if you're a criminal, then you've got a criminal contact. If somebody finds out that you're hooked up with these criminals, that can certainly be bad, especially if you've got a lawful good paladin in the party. That's like, okay.
Well, or they might need your help, or information and their help comes at a price,
right?
Or like a soldier background. What if people from the army you formerly served in all of a sudden recognize you in your rank and they have a problem they need help with,
or they're the deserters from your company.
Yeah, or they could be from the opposing side,
Yeah.
What if you have, again, that soldier background, and you've been at war with someone from the other side, and you're wearing an insignia?
That's what I just said.
You said the other side.
Yeah, the other side, the opposing side. That's what I said, right?
I got that.
Yeah. Okay.
Apparently, my ears are not working today.
I might not.
He was thinking.
I might not have been speaking human.
Yeah, sorry.
But so there's definitely things like that can be invoked. The sailor one is you get passage on a ship. Well, what if you've gotten passage on the ship, but then like you're hanging out at the docks, all of a sudden that captain that gave you passage 3 adventure ago shows up. Hey, I got a problem. We got giant rats in the hold. Can you guys clear them out?
Or the wild mage in your party burns down that you're borrowing from somebody with ship passage, and it's ship passage is way different than
burn down my ship. Well, at that point, yeah, that is a little bit different.
So, like, complications can arise due to something that you thought was going to be free sailing, smooth sailing.
Well, yeah.
So.
So basically, like, these are different places to draw on that are, boons to your character or features that can also work the other way. They can be almost like a flaw, and how to access it. When we did the stat video, someone in the comments says, "Well, we don't do negatives, negative modifiers in our group.
Okay.
We think that you're better than the commoners."
So you're always 10 plus.
Yeah, but I'm
That's
like,
not actually really difficult because the 8 is like the low point.
right. And if you do a
From
point
people-
buy, you can have average.
Yeah,
stats.
you can always have average, or you can up the point buy if you want to make it so that they're 10s.
Right, but my point was, like, okay, that's fine. You can do that. So what's great about this game, you can do whatever you want with it at your table. But sometimes a hero is not defined by his strengths, but his weaknesses, and his flaws. If you're already kind of super, it's not really that big a deal when you stand up to the bully.
Right.
But if you're the 98-pound weakling and you stand up to the bully, it's a lot more impressive.
Indeed.
Yeah. Now, I would say stat-wise, one of the things I find difficult is playing a under-average or intelligence or wisdom character when you're either like really into figuring out all the puzzles normally as like the player.
I
feel like you just have to be quiet. Like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything right now.
But you either have to be quiet or offer up bad suggestions.
Oh, I like the bad suggestions thing.
I've had that conundrum. Years ago when Dave was running a game to group. We've had loads of different personalities at the table, and when I run, Dave usually winds up in the leader role, and when Dave runs, I've usually found myself in the leader role. And we played a pseudo evil game. We were in an area that was inhabited by orcs. So orc was the most common race, orc and half orc. Well, I had a character who had pathetic stats for intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Let's face it, with 3rd edition orcs, they got pretty crappy negatives.
Yeah, they get like a -2 to 2 of those stats.
So I think I had like an 8 wisdom, a 7 intelligence, and a 6 charisma, or something around those numbers. But yet, I was the leader of the party, and people, listened to me, and some might say, well, you ruled by strength of arms and this and that. But I mean, it was like
Ted was just doing bad role playing.
I look at it as
shake her head. Internet, shake that.
I looked at it like I look back and I'm like I'm frustrated at this because like I believe there was a spellcast during the party, but they just weren't a talker, so therefore there was nobody to be the face character. So therefore whenever
took charge.
Whenever nobody steps up, I'm enough of a role player that I'm going to get in there and I'm going to role play with whatever's there.
Well, you did it wrong. You should have been said stupid things and wrong things. And
I've learned since then.
Sometimes you have to just fail the encounter.
Yeah. Until someone else goes, "Oh my God, someone shut him up."
Be like, yeah, oh man.
So it's like
the story.
But as the DM running the game, I didn't do any better because I didn't say anything. Just put a stop to it either.
But I mean, we've all learned and grown since then. That campaign was, more than a decade ago. So
a little while. Yeah, that was when I learned, and that was over 10 years ago. So
yeah.
So yeah, and that's just it too. It's like role playing the stats, like you said. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes, and those flaws make the characters more interesting. So. I don't think the shut up thing works as well. Like if you want to be, if you actively like to role play, that's not going to work. But
especially if other people are not stepping up.
Yeah, but there are other ways around it. You could make if it's a situation where you need to solve puzzles or planning, you could just throw out the most horrible suggestions or plans, or make them really
we charge.
Or
try and really sell it.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and like a low charisma, you could go the other way and just be over the top with your ideas, and how you try and get people to do it to the point where you're obnoxious, or maybe you describe things like when I tell the plan, I go up to and I tell him from an inch from his face how we should do this. Just really
or talk
things.
too loud or not talk loud enough.
I haven't bathed in 2 weeks.
Yeah, some kind of thing that's gonna not make them think you're leadership material,
or want to be close to you.
Yeah,
So yeah, so there's definitely ways around that, and you know, and again, it's like you said, as we play this game, as we do things in life, we learn, we grow, and you know, that's what it's all about. So you know, but you know, going back, hindsight's 2020. So you could have taken those flaws and really emphasized them to create a different kind of interesting role playing situation.
Mm-hmm. So it's you have to learn from what you've done wrong so that you can do better next time. You know, so I'm aware of this situation. Yeah, and it's a whole nother ball of wax of saying, well, how do I play up a mental stat?
Well, yeah, that part is because it's not actually possible.
Right.
You know, you can pretend to be smarter than you are.
You can pretend to be smarter,
but you aren't really. You know, so I guess like you could throw out a lot of big words or something. You can maybe before the session, you know, you do a little research, go through the source.
Oh yes, these are some pompous sounding words.
Ostentatious. Yes, I'm going to use that one today.
Yeah, you have a short list that you cheat. So that's what it would do. That's how you have to play up. It takes a little research. But I don't know. What do you guys got? Anything else for player tips? Have we flawed that? Are we all flawed out on this one or what?
I would say player tips for playing up a stat would definitely be.
Well, we're just doing flaws. Talking about developing your character through flaws.
I think that's good.
You know, so you know you have stats, you have role playing.
You have classes and
backgrounds, and you know, the interactions, and then you know, some things are flaws that aren't really flaws. So
what do you guys think? Put it in the comments below. You know, while you're doing that, go ahead and click like, share, even subscribe,
and check us out on Facebook.
Are you enjoying the conversation on Reddit?
So until next time,
stay nerdy.